Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from Montreal, Canada on July 22nd, 2026. Last night, the criminal Trump regime carried out its 11th straight night of bombing on Iran. These attacks constitute flagrant violations of the United Nations Charter, but you'd never know that from reading the Western corporate media. They studiously ignore the brazen illegality of these attacks and are working hard to normalize them in the minds of Westerners. But the media's attempts to normalize these crimes of the Trump regime cannot change the reality on the ground. And the reality on the ground is that Iran's retaliatory strikes on US military bases and other strategic targets in the Gulf Arab autocracies have become more and more devastating. Today, I'll share with you the latest videos and satellite imagery of Iran's retaliatory strikes, and we'll also discuss the increasingly dire warnings emanating from both Washington and Tehran. Before we get into it, please remember to like and share this video if you find it to be informative, and if you're not already a subscriber to Reason to Resist, we humbly request that you become one and help us to expand the reach of our unapologetic resistance journalism. So with that, let's begin. Yesterday, the Wall Street Journal published an article on the increasing sophistication of Iran's missile and drone strikes on US military bases in West Asia. And here you can see the headline of the article titled, "Iran Shows Its Ballistic Missiles Are Still a Force to Reckon With." And the subheading, "Tehran reconstitutes some of its weapons programs after the US and Israel tried to destroy them in the early days of the war." The article begins by noting that in April of this year, US Secretary of War and unrepentant war criminal Pete Hegseth told reporters that Iran's missile program was, quote, "functionally destroyed," close quote, with launchers and missiles, quote, "depleted and decimated and almost completely ineffective," close quote. And here we are about 3 or 4 months later, and they're more effective than ever. Now, the article goes on to say that Senator John Ossoff, a Democrat from Georgia, sharply questioned Hegseth on Tuesday during an Appropriations Committee hearing. This is a hearing at which Hegseth, on behalf of the Trump regime, is asking for an immediate infusion of tens of billions of dollars to help to fund this disastrous war. And in that hearing, the Senator Ossoff, pointed out to Hegseth that he had said that one of the objectives of the war was to obliterate Iran's missile threat, and that around the same time, he said, Hegseth, that every single one of the objectives of the war had been achieved. You can watch that video. I'm not going to show it to you now on YouTube of that exchange or other platforms, X. It's quite devastating, in fact, and shows beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you hadn't already figured it out, that Hegseth is a shameless pathological liar. Now, the article also notes that with a range of at least 900 miles, the Khaibar-Sheikhan missile of Iran was introduced in 2022 and has solid fuel and a satellite guidance system. Iran has claimed it has a maneuverable re-entry warhead to evade air defenses. It was fired on Israel in previous rounds of fighting, military analysts said. A video issued in recent days by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which oversees Iran's missile forces, said the latest attacks also included Fatah Solfagar, Fateh 110, and Qam ballistic missiles, as well as Shahid drones and Pave cruise missiles. And I'm quoting still from the article in the WSJ. Tom Caracco, a missile expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, said the continuing attacks highlight the difficulty of defending against missile attacks from an adversary that has spent years studying the US military. And he said to the WSJ, the Iranians, having watched decades of how America fights, have built an overall infrastructure that is designed to ride out a war with the US. And then it quotes the article, a former commander of Israel's air and missile defense forces, a character by the name of Ran Kochav, who told the Wall Street Journal it was likely more missiles are getting through because of damage to radars and other air defense systems from Iranian attacks earlier in the war. Their radars are exposed. Their infrastructure is exposed, he said, noting that radars and air defense batteries in Jordan and Gulf countries were hit in the first phase of the war. Now, this article happened to include a very helpful map to give you a sense of the reach of Iran's missile arsenal. And here you can see that the WSJ has helpfully shown on this map the range of these missiles. The shortest range missile, the Fateh 110, which has a range of 190 miles, you can see could reach into eastern Turkey. It can reach into also eastern Syria and anywhere in the Persian Gulf and throughout much of the Gulf of Oman. This, again, is the shortest range missile in the arsenal that is identified by the WSJ. And then the second longest range missile, the Zulfiqar, 430 miles, you can see that can reach, if you just look at the concentric circle numbered as 2, that's the Zulfiqar missile range. That can reach pretty much all the way to the border of Palestine and, into central Turkey and can cover even more, pretty much the entirety of the Gulf of Oman. And certainly, and also, I should mention eastern Saudi Arabia. And now you get into the longer range missiles. This is the continuation, what I'm going to show you up on the screen now, of this graphic from the WSJ article. You'll see that the Qiyam-2 has a range of 500 miles, the Fatah 870 miles, the Khaybar-Shaikan 900 miles, the Paveh 1,030 miles, and the Shahed 136, these relatively inexpensive drones, have a range from 600 to 1,600 miles. So if we go back again and look at the map in the WSJ article, you'll see that these longer range drones and missiles can cover the entirety of West Asia and even strike into NATO countries in Eastern Europe, including Romania and Poland. So unquestionably, these medium range and longer range missiles could strike the Akrotiri military base on the south of the island of Crete, from which the British regime has helped to enable and perpetrate all manner of crimes against humanity during the past 3 years. And it's also quite clear, although you don't see it on this map, but given the ranges that are stated for these missiles, that the Iranians could strike the US military base on Crete, the southern Greek island of Crete, which is also playing some role, although it's not entirely clear how much, in the current war of aggression on Iran. So, if you are dealing sensibly with the Iranian Republic or Islamic Republic, and you didn't have the ability to defend against its ballistic missile and drone attacks, which clearly NATO does not possess, nor does Israel, then you would be trying to come to some kind of an accommodation, which would include making concessions. But as I'm going to show you later on in this report, all of the rhetoric coming out of the Trump regime continues to be maximalist and hyper-aggressive. There's no indication whatsoever that reality has set in the deranged mind of Donald Trump. So with that, let's take a look at some of the video and satellite imagery that has emerged in the past 24 to 48 hours. I'm going to start with an interesting video that was published by a U.S. soldier who was stationed or is stationed at, I believe it's the Muwafaq Salti Air Base of the United States and the Royal Jordanian Air Force in Jordan. And this video was shot immediately after an air raid siren had sounded at the base. And the soldiers apparently were told that they had 5 minutes to take shelter. And here is what this soldier filmed at that moment.
Good. Come on. Soon.
Now, in that video, you do not hear any explosions. The video was not shot long enough to convey what happened ultimately. But what was interesting to me, amongst other things, that looks like a rather unnerving experience to have to go through, to be given 5 minutes, sometimes less perhaps, to take shelter, not entirely certain that the shelter you're taking is going to be effective to stop a direct ballistic missile strike. But when they entered the shelter, you could hear jet engines overhead. Now, those, what sounded like jet engines, perhaps those were the sounds of interceptors going up from the air defense systems of this base, or it could be that as soon as it was determined that ballistic missiles were incoming, a number of the warplanes immediately scrambled and took to the air to avoid being destroyed by the incoming ballistic missile strikes. But I can imagine having to deal with that kind of a threat 24/7 is going to eventually take its toll on these military personnel who have not been given any remotely valid or coherent justification for why this criminal war of aggression is being pursued at great risk to the military forces of the United States. So moving on, I would like to show you next some satellite imagery of massive damage to the Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan. And here you can see, I'm sorry, it's not this image. Let me find the right one. This is it right here. And you can see before and after satellite imagery. These are troop barracks. And in that red square, there has been a tremendous amount of damage inflicted. I counted approximately 20 structures within that red square have been obliterated, completely obliterated. And if that is where the troops are normally stationed or living, it is inevitable. Especially as Iran degrades the early warning radar systems of the United States, that the U.S. is going to suffer considerable casualties at these bases if they remain, heavily populated with U.S. military personnel. Now, we also have an additional satellite imagery from the same air base, which gives a more expansive view of the damage there. And here you can see that there's been damage done here to the southeastern corner of the military base. Those look to me like hangars, or maybe they're protective shelters for aircraft. Over here, there has been damage done. Not sure, those could be repair shops for aircraft. They might also be troop barracks. And then you see over here, this is just a less detailed image of what I showed you a moment ago. Those are the troop barracks, approximately 20 structures wiped out by one or more ballistic missiles. Now, here is some satellite imagery of damage done to another air base in Jordan, the King Faisal Air Base. And here you can see what appears to be the destruction of an aircraft hangar or protective shelter at that air base. By the way, there's also a King Faisal Air Base in Saudi Arabia. it may be that this is the Saudi base, but the reports I've seen indicate that it's the King Faisal base in Jordan. And we have more imagery of damage to yet another military base in Jordan. This is satellite imagery of damage to the highly secretive Tower 22 military base of the United States, which has reportedly played a crucial role in the criminal American activities in Syria over the past several years. And you can see here, this is a troop barracks that has been completely leveled to the ground in the on the left side of the screen. You can see both before and after. And really, there's a recurring, I think, observation that I have about these satellite images is that they show extraordinary precision. It looks again and again as though the target was directly hit, whereas in the early stages of this war, going all the way back to June, you know, Ted Postal, a leading weapons expert, former professor of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, said that based on his analysis, the ballistic missiles of Iran generally had a margin of error of 1 to 2 kilometers. So they could be as much as 2 kilometers from the site, the point that they sought to strike. They seem to have narrowed dramatically, the Iranians, the zone of error for these missiles. They've become extraordinarily precise. I'm going to show you more imagery, which I think bears that out. By the way, this base, Tower 22, might ring a bell for those of you who have followed this war closely. In January 2024, when genocide Joe Biden was still the president, 3 U.S. soldiers were killed in a drone strike on this base. And the Biden regime blamed resistance forces in Iraq for the attack. Now, Iran appears to be attacking Tower 22 directly with its own missiles rather than through an ally in Iraq. The Iranian military seems determined to drive U.S. forces entirely out of Jordan, and indeed all U.S. military bases in the Gulf Arab world. Here is a very interesting post today by DD Geopolitics. This is a satellite image showing, it's a bit blurry, but according to DD Geopolitics, the U.S. has evacuated King Faisal Air Base in Jordan. Planes and helicopters can be seen departing from the base after an F-15 hangar was destroyed. Muwafaq Salti Air Base has also been evacuated after it was rendered mostly out of service. And here is another satellite image, this of the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. This is reportedly the largest U.S. military facility in all of West Asia. I was there on the outskirts of the base in April of 2024, did some reporting from Qatar at the time, and I can attest to the fact it is a truly gigantic military base. According to Fotros Resistance Channel, the U.S. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar is completely empty as seen on satellite imagery today. On July 17th, the number of U.S. aircraft parked at the base had already dropped from 17 to 3, leading up to today when it was fully evacuated. So Iran appears to be successfully pushing U.S. military bases further and further westward and closer to Israel. And indeed, the reports are that that is where these retreating military forces, because that's what they are in full-blown retreat, will go next. Well, what is going to happen then? You are going to have a very, very high concentration of U.S. and Israeli military personnel and military assets in a very small area, because Israel is a pipsqueak of a country, and the Iranian military knows where all of its air bases are, all of the major military facilities of Israel are. It has already struck them repeatedly in the course of this war of aggression on Iran. And so Israel is about to become an even more target-rich environment. And if the Americans are going to start using Israeli air bases as launching points for attacks on Iran, it's hard for me to imagine that Iran is not going to then begin to strike Israel directly, which until now, at least during the most recent phase of this war of aggression, it has refrained from doing. One way or another, Israel is going to either willingly enter the war or it is going to be dragged back into the war by its masters in Washington, as much as it has tried to stay out of it in the most recent phase. And in fact, you've had people like Smotrich, this war criminal finance minister of Israel, telling the media there that this is a pretty juicy situation for Israel because Iran is being struck night after night, but it's the United States that is bearing the cost in terms of blood and in terms of treasure, whereas Israel is not having to take any of the devastation being delivered by missile and drone strikes from Iran. Well, I can assure you, my friends, that that situation is not going to last much longer. I think it's inevitable that the genocidal entity is going to get whacked and whacked very hard indeed. Now, let's look at the damage caused by Iranian strikes on Kurdish separatist forces in Iraq. Let's begin with a satellite image showing the aftermath of strikes on a hilltop facility in northern Iraq. And as you can see there, this is a camp reportedly near or in Sulaymaniyah in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and it looks to have been completely burned. We showed on one of our more recent episodes video of this hilltop ablaze. The fires have been put out, but as you can see, nothing but devastation is left. According to the Iranian government, the militants who operate here are not only separatists, but also engaged in terrorist activity targeting Iran. Now, here is also some satellite imagery of a damaged power station in Bahrain. You can see again the before and after imagery here. Iran claims that this site is a U.S. military C2 and AI data center. Now, as you may recall, Iran's military openly calls upon the peoples of the Arab world. It's consistently doing this now in its daily statements to expel the child murdering U.S. military forces from their lands. This admonition seems to be having some effect in Kuwait, of all places. Here is a video of what is reportedly unrest in the streets of Kuwait. The protesters are apparently demanding the departure of U.S. forces from their country.
لا 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 ليش لا لا اخويا لا ما يصير يا ابن عمي لا دولة هاي لا
Now, there's more, but I think you get the picture. Resistance channel Fotros has provided a comprehensive overview of military operations by both sides during the past 24 hours. I'll take you through that quickly. You'll see there's quite a bit of activity on both sides. So this is the war summary for July 21st, 22nd. Update starting 11 p.m. Tehran time. U.S. attacked Kongavar in Kermanshah province, likely targeting one of Iran's smaller missile facilities. U.S. intensively shelled Bebahan with missiles from HIMARS systems. These are land-based missile systems, so probably they were coming from one of the Persian Gulf autocracies. Governor of Hamadan confirmed several locations in Kabudarahan County targeting IRIAF Noj Air Base were struck by the U.S. Bana city in Kurdistan province was also targeted, targeting telecommunication systems, according to Tasnim. Explosions were reported in Bushehr port at a military center south of Tabriz, Mashhad, Bandar Abbas, Sidik, and Chabahar. Tabriz is not on the Persian Gulf. In fact, it's one of the cities I visited when I was in Iran during the Ramadan War. It's in the northwestern corner of the country. It's not far from the Turkish border. It's well inland from the Persian Gulf, so this could signal an expansion of the zone of operation and these criminal strikes being carried out by the United States. Now, the Photos channel goes on to say that Adash drones targeted an equipment warehouse and a large storage hangar. I'm sorry, I've skipped over. Let me first of all finish with the American activities. Air defenses were activated in eastern Tehran, but there were no air attacks. One hostile drone was spotted, which was shot down. And note, reports of air defense activity explosions in Pakdash are false. So now here's what the Iranian army did within the past 24 hours. With several drones struck the ammunition and logistics equipment depots belonging to the command center of the U.S. Army's ground forces at Camp Doha in western Kuwait. With several drones targeted the U.S. military's accommodation and welfare facilities in an equipment depot at Muwafaq al-Salti Air Base in Jordan. Adash drones targeted an equipment warehouse and large storage hangars, as well as maintenance and repair hangar for heavy aircraft of the U.S. military at Sheikh Issa Air Base in Bahrain. Just pausing there, these attacks are being done with drones, which are relatively inexpensive. They have long range. And the air defenses of the United States, if they're anything close to what they're claimed to be, should be taking out the vast majority of these drones. But the satellite imagery suggests that they are doing considerable damage. So moving on, what else did Iran do in retaliation? Adash drones targeted an equipment warehouse and large storage hangars, as well as a maintenance and repair hangar for heavy aircraft of the U.S. military at the Sheikh Issa Air Base in Bahrain. Inside the King Faisal and Prince Hassan air bases, the IRGC struck an F-15 preparation hangar, a drone preparation hangar with 8 brand new MQ-9 drones still inside their packaging and not yet assembled for service. They were said to be completely destroyed. 2 additional drones positioned outside the hangar sustained heavy damage. A helicopter maintenance hangar, 2 heavy U.S. helicopters sustained major damage, and accommodation facilities killing and injuring several. And then just a little bit later on, after this update came out, there was one more supplementary update which disclosed that actually I seem to have misplaced the supplementary update, but it disclosed that there were several more attacks done during this period of July 21 to 22 by the Iranian military. So it's quite clear that Iran is carefully picking off strategically important in many cases assets, United States military assets of the United States, particularly these early warning radar systems, and it is now also with more determination going after U.S. military personnel by striking the barracks where they are housed. It is also doing very considerable damage to the Air Force assets of the United States, drones, helicopters, and in some cases, warplanes. So this is obviously becoming an extremely costly misadventure yet again for the United States military. But as I'm going to show you, that doesn't seem to have chastened Donald Trump one iota, not yet at any rate. Now, I want to show you one particularly impressive satellite image, I thought. This is an image of the destruction of an ANFPS-117 long-range early warning radar at Ahmad al-Jaber Air Base in Kuwait. And according to DG Geopolitics, the FPS-117 is one of the most important assets in any integrated air defense network. It provided hundreds of kilometers of airspace surveillance and feeding targeting data to command centers and air defense systems. And just look at how precise this is. The bubble which contained the radar has been completely obliterated, but the surrounding buildings although they've sustained some damage, none of them seems to have suffered catastrophic damage, which suggests that the strike was very precise. They wanted to hit the radar system, and they nailed it, and apparently did that with one shot. If that's all it takes to take out such an important radar system, the U.S. forces in the region are in dire trouble. I can assure you of that. Finally, let's turn to the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab al-Mandab Strait. A few more lunatic ship owners sent their tankers into the Strait of Hormuz without Iranian consent, after Iran said that it wouldn't tolerate any non-authorized passage through the Strait of Hormuz, and that it would strike those vessels. And here is the aftermath of one of these kamikaze ship owners sending a tanker through the Strait of Hormuz without Iranian consent. As you can see, there's a lot of fire billowing from that vessel. And here's video footage. I think this could be the same vessel, or it might be another one which was also hit. Apparently, there were several that were hit by the Iranian forces in the last 2 to 3 days. Now, it turns out that the owner of the ship that is on fire and that has been abandoned is a Greek shipping company by the name of Dynacom. Article published 2 days ago by the Sea Trade Maritime News. The title, as you can see, is Crew Abandoned Burning Dynacom Tanker in Strait of Hormuz. And the article reads, a product tanker, Kovomaleos, owned by George Prokopiou's Dynacom Tankers, is ablaze after being hit by an unknown projectile in Strait of Hormuz. The UK MTO said in an update on the fire on board the tanker 8 nautical miles north of Kuzmar, Oman, in the Strait of Hormuz, that the company's CSO said the vessel had been struck by an unknown projectile and was on fire. The incident took place at around 1924 hours UTC on July 19th. The vessel's crew have abandoned ship and were safely rescued by a tugboat. The tanker is now adrift and remains on fire, according to the UK MTO. Now, here's the part that blows me away. Maritime security firm Vanguard said the tanker involved is the 2025-built Maltese-flagged Kovomaleos. The Kovomaleos is operated by Dynacom Tankers Management, and its beneficial owner is Dynacom Tankers, according to Polestar Global Purple Track. According to tracking data, the Kovomaleos had broadcast a last location prior to the attack offshore from Fujairah. So this is on the to the south of the Strait of Hormuz. Fujairah is a port of the United Arab Emirates on the Sea of Oman. So it had last broadcast from Fujairah on July 18th before turning off its AIS. The tanker had been stranded in the Arabian Gulf after it transited through the Strait of Hormuz on 25th February and spent several months offshore Saudi Arabia. It appeared to exit the Strait of Hormuz around July 2nd, although AIS tracking was turned off. So, first of all, this kook, Prokopiou, I can't imagine that this was done without his consent. This billionaire Greek ship owner sent one of the newest vessels that his company has. It was built in 2025 by China's shipyards through the Strait of Hormuz when there was a high likelihood that it was going to be hit and potentially sunk by an irate Iranian military that insists on maintaining, for perfectly good existential reasons, an iron grip on the Strait of Hormuz. Why this kook would do that, I can only speculate. But it appears what happened was, after spending a lot of time in the Persian Gulf after the initial closure of the Strait of Hormuz, it snuck through the Strait of Hormuz, okay, and apparently survived that surreptitious crossing. Then spent some time on the Omani side of the Strait of Hormuz, near the UAE port of Fujairah, and decided for some reason, I mean, this is the best that I can make of it, to re-enter the Persian Gulf, and to do so surreptitiously. Now, I can't imagine that unless this man is a catastrophically stupid businessman, I can't imagine that Prokopiu would send one of his company's newest tankers through the Strait of Hormuz twice, without the consent of the Iranians, unless he was being compensated handsomely for that risk. Who's compensating his company? I can't say. I can only speculate. Is it the Greek government? Who's basically indemnifying these ship owners, saying, we'll reimburse you for any damage done to your vessel? Are they doing that secretly? Is it the U.S. government that's doing it? Is it the Emiratis who are doing it? Or the Saudis? Or is it just that whoever it is that's selling this oil and trying to transport it is willing to pay a fantastically enormous premium to make it worthwhile for these vessels to be placed at risk this way? I don't know, but I can't believe that there isn't some kind of financial shenanigans going on behind the scenes to induce some of the more, shall we say, risk-preferring ship owners who operate in this part of the world, to induce them to send their vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. But whatever may be going on here, the inducements are not enough to cause a large number of vessels to go through. The traffic has slowed to an absolute trickle, well under 10 vessels in the past 24 hours, according to Kepler. And all of this, of course, is being reflected in the price of oil. I'm going to come back to that in just one second. In the interim, what I want to show you is that the blockade is now also effective in the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, although it is limited there to Saudi oil tankers, or tankers that are transporting Saudi oil. And here you can see a report on Tasnim News. Today, vessel tracking data shows that on Wednesday, 4 oil tankers changed their course in the Red Sea. Reuters news agency reported in the meantime, 2 oil tankers announced the Suez Canal as their new destination, following the Yemenis' warning to refrain from going to the ports of Saudi Arabia. So this blockade not only is effective, but it's very, very targeted and precise. It's not all shipping, associated with countries that are unfriendly to the axis of resistance. It's just targeting tankers that are transporting Saudi oil. And my understanding is that before this new blockade went into effect, this limited blockade, about 5 million barrels of Saudi oil were going through the Bab al-Mandeb Strait every day. So a whole whack of oil has been taken off of the market in an already highly stressed oil market. So how is Donald Trump responding to all of this? Well, Donald Trump is, of course, resorting to more genocidal rhetoric. On Truth Social, he posted, I believe this was yesterday or this morning, from this point forward, anytime the Islamic Republic of Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz, whether it be by missile, rocket, drone, or any other device or weapon, the U.S. will bomb and destroy one bridge or power plant, including those located next to or in the capital city of Tehran. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And you can see that our friend Syed Mohammed Marandi quoted Trump's deranged post and said, "So it's time to evacuate Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, and probably Oman." And then a little later on, Professor Marandi actually posted on X a list of 6 or 7 very important energy-producing facilities in the Gulf Arab autocracies that he said he believed would be targeted first by Iran if Trump carries out this threat. Now, will he carry out the threat? I don't think we can exclude that possibility. He is, after all, a madman, but it may be that he will ultimately be persuaded to exercise some modicum of restraint because of what is happening in the oil markets. Yet again today, the price of oil soared. It went up. The price of Brent crude, a barrel of Brent crude, went up 3.36% today, and is at in excess of $94 US a barrel. Just, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, before Donald Trump, used the MOU like toilet paper and then flushed it unceremoniously down the toilet, the price of oil of a barrel of Brent crude, I think it had fallen below $70. It was down in the $60 range. Happy days are gone again, and it's only going to get worse from here, unless and until Donald Trump comes to the understanding, which inevitably he or his successor will, that the US government is going to have to pay the piper. Sooner or later, the piper will have to be paid. This is Dimitri Lascaris signing off from Montreal, Canada on July 22nd, 2026.